Hey there, action takers. How does having the right support system of peers affect the speed in you achieving your goals? I think we all know the answer is significantly. However, I think we also know it's not that easy to find supportive people who get it and want to or are able to help. I'm your host, David B., and together with my partner in crime, Teresa Merrick, we welcome you back to the IDKWTF I Was Doing podcast, where we're dedicated to guiding you on how to create income from your interests despite those moments when you don't have a clue what you're doing. Because trust us, we've been there too. Today, we're going to tackle an indispensable piece of the success puzzle: support and accountability. We'll cover the exact steps you need to take to find that much needed one-on-one support to truly crush your goals. You see, Teresa and I have been doing this for years, navigating through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and our own creative endeavors. It's this experience that we're sharing with you today because we believe in your potential. In this episode, Teresa will delve into the critical differences between a coach and a consultant and why you might want to choose one over the other. So, if you struggled with deciding who you need to level up in your business or personal journey, because it can be daunting, we're here to clear that up. Then, I'm going to discuss exactly where to go to find an accountability buddy and how to reach out for that support. I'll also explain why, even though it might seem counterintuitive, you might want to consider paying someone to be your accountability buddy, as opposed to hiring a coach, mentor, or consultant. It might just be the key ingredient you need to achieve your goals. So why listen to the end? Because we're sharing real, actionable insights that you can apply immediately to your own journey. So if this is the type of thing that has you leaning in, ready to hear more, hit that subscribe button, because Teresa and I are your sideline cheerleaders, giving you guidance, inspiration, and a healthy dose of support. So action takers, sit back, focus up, and let's dig into this together. Have you ever started something new and didn't finish it?
You were excited. You invested time and money.
You got stuck.
I'm Teresa Merrick.
And I'm David B.
And this is the podcast with two ADHD entrepreneurs, and we've been there.
And worked with hundreds of people in the exact same place.
The IDKWTF I Was Doing podcast will take you away from feelings of frustration and overwhelm.
And lead you to the clarity you need to take action and get shit done.
Listen today, because it's important to admit that no one really knows
what the fuck they're doing.
And welcome back once again, action takers, to the IDK WTF I Was Doing podcast. I'm David B.
And I'm Teresa Merrick. And we, as we promised, are here today to talk to you about consultants, coaches, accountability buddies. How do we find them? But this is like the accumulation of the last several episodes. So if you have not checked them out, start back at episode 67, where we started talking about how to be okay when you don't know what you're doing. Because that's like what we're about. We talked about preparing yourself for setbacks that will happen. We talked about committing to your path. And then we've talked about routines. David, what else did we talk about?
Yeah. And so after routines, you gave us really good masterclass on kind of how to end your day to set your next day up to be the best day possible and create really good nightly routines. And then you really went even deeper into stress and like what to do when we're stressed out, because as we're changing, as we're growing, that stress inevitably comes up and tries to pull us back down. And so that was a great episode on 73. And then we talked about really the questions to ask, how to get crystal clear on what it is we're doing and what we need to do next, and then how to find the exact things we need to get that. And then what else did we do?
And then our most recent episode was about communities. And we talked about what it is to be part of a mastermind. We talked about how to find the right Facebook groups, the right meetup groups, maybe create your own. We also talked about network marketing and if you how that's a built-in community and like what to look for to find a quality one, if that's something that you might be looking for. So that's what we covered in our last episode. And then today we really want to talk about the one-on-one piece of community, because we think about community as like a big group, But community also is there in small group and one-on-one interactions.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really, I mean, the key to all of this is it's so much easier to accomplish something that you haven't done before when you're surrounded by people who have done it and are doing it. It's much more difficult when there's people around you who don't see your vision, who don't see your dream, who don't really have the context of what could be. Maybe they know it's for some people, but it's not for them. But deep in your heart, you know it's for you. And so the best thing to do is get around the people that also know it's for them.
Yes, because there are people in your life, in my life, that I've had that are like cheerleaders. They totally are like, you can do this. I believe in you. Like, I support you. And they're not on the path I'm on, even a little bit. So they're supportive. And I feel grateful to have those people. And it's super helpful to not be alone. And that it's lonely when you don't have the community support, when you don't. It's also, and we've talked about this a lot in the series we just talked about, is when you feel like entrepreneurship can be so lonely. And so this community piece, this one-on-one piece, it's important to creating that like sense that I might be doing this business, my own business. I might be doing this thing by myself, but there are people around who are doing something very parallel to what you're doing, and they get it. And there's people that can help you get to that next level.
And even despite sometimes having people around you that are figuring it out themselves and being supportive, sometimes you need a little more of that personal touch of help.
Yes.
So I think today's episode is coming in, right?
And so when you have paid help, nobody wants to hear that because it's like, oh, how can I get this for free? You can get all sorts of communities for free. You can join a network marketing company, which I talked about before, for free. But it's like that upline support, that personal coach or consultant that you hire, that accountability buddy that you paid for, they are really going to show up for you because they're making money. They're like, that's literally their job, is to show up for you.
And it's interesting because I'm very resourceful and I'm pretty good at figuring things out. And I was good at finding information that was otherwise behind a paywall, right? And so I spent a lot of time trying to find like the things that I needed, that I thought I needed to get to the next place that I was trying to get to. But it really wasn't until I just started investing in some programs where it was just so much easier and I got results so much faster. And not only that, the people around me were higher quality and more supportive. And it sounds like such like a thing someone trying to get you to spend money would say. It's like, until you start spending money, you're not going to really get results. But it really is, it's really surprisingly true. One thing, so they just did that Matthew McConaughey event with Dean and Tony Robbins' team. And there's a few hilarious things I took away from that. Because one was KK's she's the like MC, she's the main speaker. She starts out getting everyone hyped up, kind of setting the expectations. But one thing that she says is if you're not sitting upright, if you're not paying attention, you're not going to get the most out of this. You're really going to get what you invest into these different events and these different things. And like, just paying attention to a free event is one thing. And then when you invest into the next level of an event, you tend to get more. And then I saw something else in the comments in the Matthew McConaughey Facebook group, and they're all just complaining about stuff. And they're like, this is wrong, and this is wrong. And everyone's really supportive. But one dude's comment stuck out, and he was like, everyone's complaining about the same thing. Are the comments any different in the paid group? And, you know, I'm part of the paid group from the previous program. And it is a very different feel. It's a very different vibe because people have invested to that next level. And the support is just quite a bit different than you would expect, right?
Yeah. Well, when you have some skin in the game, when you have spent a little bit of money, and that's why sometimes these at-home self-paced programs can be great if you have the discipline to do it. But the reality is, and we've talked about this in other episodes, the reality is how many of us have bought some of those things. They're not as expensive as maybe hiring a coach directly and doing one-on-one or a group. But if you don't do the exercises, if you watch all the videos, but the person in the videos is saying, here's what you should do. Like before you log back in, before next week or whenever, do X, Y, and Z every day, right? That'll forward you. If you do those things, it's likely going to work. But who's holding you accountable?
Exactly.
Maybe
Exactly.
you are, but I know I can be really, sometimes I'm great about it. Sometimes I'm terrible about it. Sometimes I just cherry pick and I'm like, well, I want to do this thing and I don't really want to do this thing.
Or often, sometimes you'll start to do the thing and then get stuck on something that you
Yep.
don't know how to do in the steps of what they lay out in the video, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then, right?
Yeah, and if there's no one there to support you through that, to say, and some of the small programs I've bought, if I reach out and go, hey, on this part, I'm confused or I feel stopped right here, usually those creators will be like, oh, and they're happy to have free conversation. You don't have to hire them. And sometimes they'll give you some and they're like, this is also why I offer one-on-one, or
Mhm.
why I offer this particular group that's maybe like a monthly group that's paid or something. Usually they will have some of those options, and it's worthwhile because you also don't have to be part of these groups, or like you shouldn't hire a coach that is your coach for the next 10 years.
Mhm.
Probably not. Like maybe, but I would say it's probably a more rare situation because usually most of these like coaches or consultants are helping you get from point A to point B and maybe even through like point F, okay? But like they're not going to get you to Z probably because you're going to be in a totally different place when you started off at point A from when you're at halfway through the alphabet and when you're at like X. Those are
Absolutely.
totally different spots. So you'll need different people with different skill sets to support you potentially.
Yeah. And so what else? What are some of the other benefits of that, like paying for a consultant or paying for a coach?
Yeah, I think when you pay for someone who's like a consultant, they're really there to help guide you. So they are going to have some steps in place. They're going to say, here, do these things in this order.
Mhm.
And they're going to give you some templates and some ideas. And then so the difference between a consultant and a coach is really just that. The consultant is like telling you what to do and giving you a guide. And a
Mhm.
coach is saying, here, I'm going to give you some tools, but we're going to help you work this out for yourself. There's space for both, but they're not necessarily the same. I actually do both. And usually when I'm consulting, like I will do pieces of it that are coaching because it's super beneficial. And I
Mhm.
love personal growth. But I think when you have someone there, it's also a level of accountability.
Okay.
So that if you have a standing call with them every week, and like for me, when I ask my clients, I'm like, okay, so here's your goal. How many calls are you going to make this week? How many, whatever. Like I have them do some tangible like goal setting. And it just allows them to know that next week I'm probably going to say, okay, so how did those 3 calls go?
Mhm.
Because it just puts it on the line. It gives you a space to know that someone is asking about it. It helps me when I have my own deadline, but if I set a deadline for myself, I might miss the deadline. And if nobody's there to be like for me to be accountable to, then I don't even have anybody asking. And it's not even like to scold you. It's just so that you know someone's there to support you. But then if you're in the process and you're like, well, on call 2, this thing happened and I really got stopped and then I kind of freaked out and I didn't make call number 3.
Mhm.
But then that person, that coach or consultant is going to work with you on how to get through whatever it is that stopped you and move on so you can make those future calls. Because as we know, our listeners are action takers. And when you take actions, you're going to get stopped sometimes.
Mhm.
But the only way to know is to take actions. And those people are going to help you take the actions and course correct.
Mhm. So how does someone know if they should look for a coach or if they should look for a consultant?
I think it depends on what your goals are, like, because there's a million coaches and consultants out there. It didn't used to be like this, but now it's like everybody's a coach.
Mhm.
I'm also not going to say you don't need someone who's certified from 6 places. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for like if you're struggling in your relationship, maybe you need to see a relationship coach, someone who can help you work through that. If you're a new entrepreneur and you're like, I don't know how to set up all my own stuff, that's actually something David is really great at helping with. So you don't have to, right? But it's like most of us can't afford to go pay a website designer to make this cool website. But it's then you find someone who is like David, who is affordable and who helped me set up my website when I first started and I had no idea what I was doing, and who said, here's how to get your federal ID number, all those things that you don't know you need. So it's like, when do you need one? If you have, and so it's like David really was my consultant in that way. And it's like both of us have those skills, consulting and coaching. And then when you're like, so coaching can also just be like, maybe you're stuck emotionally. And yes, there's therapy. Coaches are not therapists, but there's also like a plethora of tools that a coach is going to be able to help you get through if you just are constantly stopped. They're going to be able to be like, okay, here's some exercises. Here's a great book that I'm going to recommend, but here's some exercises from this book that we're going to work on. So it depends on what you want to, because you might just want to be like, I just want to develop myself. So maybe you want to bust up your financial insecurities because you know you have some like head trash about finances. So then maybe you want a coach who's going to be able to help you shift your mentality.
How do you think, what's the best way someone can find a coach?
Well, just go to Google. Just kidding. Just kidding. Using your network that we talked about building is probably the best way to find a coach. I mean, asking people, hey, has anybody ever had a business coach? Has anybody used a life coach? Does anybody know a great relationship coach? And sometimes you're not comfortable maybe putting that like in a public space on your Facebook wall or something. But like we talked about in the last episode, when you find some of these groups, you're trying to find like-minded people and really like referrals from other people. Or if you have a favorite podcast, like the IDKWTF podcast, even if maybe you don't know us personally, but you listen to our podcast and we're like, hey, if you're a woman and you like to do outdoor events and you want to do some healing and personal growth, go check out Jill, who's been on our podcast. She does these amazing, like immersive, actual in-person events. We're telling you, you should trust Jill and you're going to get something from it. It's worth it to check her out. Right?
Absolutely. And what I found is definitely finding people who have content that you relate to and enjoy.
Yes.
Right? And so whether it's they're commenting in Facebook groups and talking about certain stuff, because a lot of the time coaches aren't out there. I find the best coaches aren't out there just promoting themselves everywhere and saying, hey, hire me with a big sign on the street, right? I'm a coach, give me money, right? And so what I think really, especially in this day and age where there are so many coaches out there, is you have to be able to see what they're about first. You have to learn their personality. You've got to see what kind of advice that they give, and then see if that's something that you resonate with, and then see if they're affordable, right? Because the coaches with most content often aren't affordable.
And I think that's a great way to do it is their social media. And yeah, how much value, like if you asked a question in a forum and someone responds and gives you this great information, there might be more to that person.
Absolutely. Yeah. So click on their page, see what they say.
Totally. Yeah. Take a peek. Like we all snoop.
Right.
We all snoop on social media. All of us do it. And sometimes for entertainment purposes, but you can actually utilize it for your own benefit. And that way you can also see how they feel. Do they feel spammy on their page where all they talk about is their product and their book, and they never talk about, yes, here's my new book, here's my new program, but also here's some free information. Also, here's a cute picture of my dog occasionally, something that makes you like them. And maybe you don't like that, but I like that. I like that there's a little personal element. That's how, so when I'm looking for people, if it feels very cold, it's not for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what else should our action takers know about hiring a coach or a consultant, or what things should they keep in mind?
I think a really big tip for looking for a coach or consultant is look for someone who's 5 steps ahead of you. Because just like I said, I'm not ready to spend $20,000 on coaching. It's because that's not where my business and my life is. I'm not making the kind of money that I could spend $20,000 on anything that's not super major. Absolutely. On a convention of some kind. That's not. So it wouldn't make sense anyway. Even if I saved and spent $20,000, I probably wouldn't get anything out of that weekend because it would all be things that I'm not there yet.
Right.
So you want that coach who's a few steps ahead of you in whatever it is you're looking for, who's got that like relatableness, and they know more than you. They know what it is today, right now, to be on the pulse of that.
That's the number one thing that I see happen, and it happens surprisingly quickly. When people start going through the process of building a business or making money, I really see it happen. They somehow forget what it's like at the very beginning. They might have the story, but they really forget. They lose this level of empathy for those who are just starting out, right?
Yeah.
And so having someone who's just a few steps ahead, they can relate, they understand the struggles, they understand the technology. Something I say is Tony Robbins doesn't know how to build a website. He doesn't know how to he probably doesn't even know how to send a Facebook message. He pays people to do that.
Right.
And he doesn't have to know that. So he can't coach you on the things to do because he's so far removed. But those like us, who we're just small time podcasters with our own little businesses, we're going to relate so much better to someone who's just starting out, who's trying to make ends meet. And I think and those like that are in our same kind of boat are just so much more helpful because we're still kind of there, right?
Absolutely. I think it's super clear too. Like sometimes when you look at somebody's content, so I will go back to, I love that you said that, David, because it's so true. I have seen some really cool coaches and consultants like on Instagram, and I love what they say. But when they're like, oh yeah, I'm teaching people to get to $1 million in their business, that's not the person whose content that I really relate to. I like them, but I don't like their tips and tricks aren't the level I'm at because I'm not building $1 million business right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I think you want people who are realistic. Like, yeah, I'm not $1 million. If you want to learn how to grow your business to $1 million, I'm not the consultant for you because I haven't done it myself yet.
Right.
But exactly. I agree with what you're saying too, though, is if you go to a consultant that's like that, and you're like, but she's amazing. She's probably really amazing. And until your business is at that level, or until your skill set is as such that you actually are going to that place, you just got to reel it in, find somebody who's just, it's like you want to have just a small gap.
Yeah.
And that's why I said too, you probably won't have the same coach or consultant forever, because as you go up, you might be like, okay, like I've taken all of this person's courses. They're amazing. I'm going to refer people to them. I love them. And it's time for me to go find someone new in this area. Absolutely. Because I need some new things. I'm at a different level, whatever it is. And it's perfect. That's how it should be. It's like growing and evolving. School is never out for the pro, man. Like things are constant. David and I talk about this all the time because David is so future oriented. Well, I am very chatty about this topic because I love it. I love coaching and consulting and accountability and all that good stuff. But let's take a really quick break because then we want to talk a little bit more about accountability buddies. We mentioned it earlier, but David has some very interesting things to say about accountability. So we'll be right back. Have you ever started something new that you were really excited about and invested time or money into, but after doing it for a while, you reach a point and you just feel like, I have no idea what the F I'm doing?
There's that bubbling up of frustration because you're not quite as good as you thought you'd be, or it's nowhere near as easy as you expected. Then suddenly, a wave of guilt comes at the same time, and you don't really want to or feel like you can express this to anyone.
Having a dream you want to accomplish can be very sad and isolating. It's lonely because visionaries tend to see the world the way that it could be instead of settling for the way the world currently is, like most people do.
We believe this so deeply that we wrote a book with the exact 4 steps to help.
This guide is designed to take you out of that feeling of frustration and overwhelm and lead you into the calmness and clarity that you need to reach the life that you know in your heart you're destined to have.
If you've started a project or a goal but have stopped, gotten stuck, or are starting to feel burned out, this is 100% the book for you.
Go to IDKWTFpodcast.com today and download your digital copy with the coupon code ACTION to get it on us, because we want to join you and be your supportive friends and partners throughout your journey.
It's only free for a limited time if you use the code ACTION by going to our website, IDKWTFpodcast.com.
Check it out today and let's get unstuck together.
So we really went over just now, like the benefits of investing, right? Investing in that one-on-one consultant or the coach. And I think we got some great tips on there. But sometimes some of us are those logical buyers or those logical minded people who just go scour the interwebs and we find all of the information and we know already what the coach is going to tell us to do. So it's like, why would I invest in a coach when I already know most of the stuff that I need to do to get to that next level, right?
That is totally David. We are talking about David right now. David always knows all of it already. And I'm like, how do you know all of that?
Yes, because I over research. And that's one of my issues is I'll over prepare, right? But in that over preparation, one of the things that happens is there's not a lot of doing. So that preparedness procrastination.
Yes. And actually, future episode that we are definitely going to be recording is like when to stop learning and take action, because it's super easy to do that, especially those of us that are like, more information. So
of course, let's sign up for this other. I'll get this other book. Let me just get a little bit more. I just need to see there's one more webinar, right?
Right.
Then I'll be ready. And
Right.
then I'll be ready.
We're action takers here though.
Yes.
Sometimes.
But that's the benefit of where an accountability buddy can really come in to someone who's not necessarily a coach, not necessarily any steps ahead of you. They might be right at the same level doing the exact same thing. But just having someone there who you can bounce ideas off of that can give you good, honest feedback, but also hold you accountable for the things that you say you're going to do. I think it's so going through Colorado Mastermind. Again, we've had at least 1,000 entrepreneurs come through and have conversations about exactly what they need help with. And the number one thing that I see is that there's a lot of information out there, but a lot of people don't enact on what they know and what they've learned, right? And there's a million different reasons, right? It could be fear of failure, fear of success, just the worthiness issues, which is usually what it can come down to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's paying for a coach might not always be the right answer, or joining a community might not be the right answer. What is really interesting with coaching as well, what I found is a lot of times that fear of doing that next step leads to a little bit of resentment or rebelling against the advice the coach has.
Oh my gosh. Do you know how many clients that I've worked with that like they want to do the thing?
Mhm.
They are paying for me to be their coach, for me to help them. And
Mhm.
they'll like put off being on a call. They'll just miss calls. And it's and there's a level of this like resistance and pushbackness. And it's, but you say you want this. So how can I can't, like a coach can't necessarily, well, they can, it depends on the coach or consultant, but we're not going to make you do something. And if they're telling you to do something, there is that level of, you ain't my boss.
Yeah, you're not the boss, I'm my own boss. That's why we're entrepreneurs, right?
We don't want a boss.
So, and it's interesting because I also saw, I think the first time I really, really recognized this was with one of my colleagues who's this international speaker. She's helped so many people. And then one of my other colleagues hired her as a coach. And so I got to be on the outside of it and see the conversation from both sides. And the coach wasn't really telling me what was going on, but
right, for privacy for her client. But
my colleague who hired her was, and I kind of knew her coaching style, so I kind of knew what was going on. And then but she was like, well, she's telling me to do these calls, and I don't think these calls are the way to go. And I don't think I should be doing this. And I said, well, did you try it? And really, it was her fear of picking up the phone. And so her defense mechanism kicked in. And then it was wild to see that interaction. I was like, oh, okay, I see. I get it. Right.
Totally. Well, and a good coach or consultant will, once they can get you back on the phone or on a Zoom call or whatever, will ask, what are you noticing you're getting stopped by? But also sometimes they don't know to ask because a lot of us are good fakers too. But everything went great. Oh yeah, I made those calls. It went amazing. When you really did it.
Level of honesty from the client.
Right. Then you might feel like you need to lie. And then you're like, why would I hire someone that I'm just going to lie to? Because I don't want to do what they're telling me to do because they're not the boss of me.
Exactly. So it's really neat. So oftentimes coaching and consulting isn't the right answer. And especially getting so we might think, okay, I'll go get another course because maybe I need to learn something else. But that's not the right answer because we're still going to get stuck and stopped in the same places. So really like the difference of an accountability buddy is they're a peer. They're not there to judge you. You can like joke around, you can have fun with it, but they're just there to be someone that you send your schedule to, that are bouncing ideas off of and coming back to, and then saying, hey, I'm going to do this. And then it's like more of a mutually beneficial relationship because you guys can do that with each other.
Because then it's like there's that level of like body doubling almost. If you guys don't know what body doubling is, it's like sometimes you can pay to be in groups where you're both on Zoom at the same time working. So it's sort of the same thing where it's mutual. Like you said, you can joke around. There's not this, you can take out some of the like professional, I don't know what word I'm looking for, like the professional air of it, the professional feel that sometimes you just want something a little more relaxed.
Exactly. Yeah. And however, the problem is, like you mentioned at the top of this episode, is that a reliable accountability buddy is so hard to find because, again, we're all busy. We're all doing our own thing. How am I going to keep up with what you're doing when I can barely keep up what I'm doing? Right.
Well, right. It's like I can't necessarily remember. And it has to be a super mutual thing. And people have to, and the other person has to be as reliable, like about as equally as reliable as you are on that topic of the thing you agree to be buddies on.
Absolutely.
Which is why it's so rare.
Exactly. And so few and far between. And the thing that I compare it to is often I'll get people, or I'll see people who need to build a website. People are like, okay, I need to build a website, but I don't need help because of my cousin as a website designer. And my cousin's going to help me and they're going to get this for me. I was like, okay, cool. Let me know when that happens.
They're not.
And it's sad because the cousin might be the best. They might be great at it. They might really want to help you, and their family. So they should put you at that top of the priority list. But how it works every single time is you're at the bottom of the priority list because their clients have these expectations, they have contracts, and they can't let those clients down. So your website is to the last thing to do, and then they're tired and they don't want to work on it at that point.
Or if they set it up for you at some point, eventually, then when you have an issue with it, you're on the bottom of that list too. And that's personally what I've found, because I have worked with people who I love dearly, family members, friends. The reality is that if you want their best service and you want their best quality attention, you got to pay them and be their client. Don't ask for their friends and family discount. Even if they offer it to you, be like, no, I want to pay you for your job. So if somebody says, you want me to build you a website, and they're your cousin, and they're like, the reality is I just don't have time unless you like sign up and actually hire me as a consultant. I would love to work with you. I'd love to build this site for you, but I just know. And those are the people who like you could actually work with because they're like, yeah, be my actual client. Like
what's interesting is sometimes I found even with that, even if you're paying them their full rate, because you're family, they can slack a little bit. They're like, oh, it's my family. They're going to forgive me if I don't give my 100%.
Oh, well, it was my daughter's birthday. You guys know you came to the party. And there is that too. It really depends on the relationship. And it's very risky to hire a family for anything at all. Okay. So David, what should you look for? Is there a way to hire an accountability buddy? Because I mean, as far as I know, that's not exactly a thing. You can Google and find, like, you can find a billion coaches, but if I Google professional accountability buddy, how do I find someone who does this?
So that is what's interesting. And I have not really seen it, right? So I've seen accountability partnerships as part of bigger coaching packages. So you spend $3,000 on a coaching package where you get their course, you get some one-on-one coaching, and then like accountability groups. That I've seen before, but I've never seen like someone who is just an accountability buddy. So that's kind of the niche that I'm filling into recently, is because that's what I want to be for people, is someone who can be there for you when you need them. And I do unlimited everything, right? So it's that, like, if you need help, if you need support, we can talk all of the time and we can just share schedules and you can tell me what's going on. And I also happen to know a lot about entrepreneurship and saving money and doing all of these things that you're doing too. So it's really a great relationship because that's the key is when you're looking for something like that. And whether it's me, the other way to go, right, is to, if you're in a different Facebook group or if you're in a community of people doing the same thing. It's a great idea, like we mentioned, to maybe start a separate chat group. One of our podcast groups we're in, someone started a chat group in there and said, hey, this is like, there's like 10 people in here in this 3,000 people group. I wanted to do some just kind of one-on-one support with each other. Do you guys want to do that? So you can start with that and then maybe find someone who's really active or someone who comments a lot in the group and say, hey, I would love to pay you to be my accountability buddy. And that's a lot more approachable to someone to say, hey, would you mentor me? Or, hey, would you coach me? Because a lot of times, if you're talking to someone out of the blue and you're like, hey, will you coach me? They don't think they're a coach, right? So they're going to be like, well, I don't know about that. But if you're like, hey, can I pay you to be an accountability buddy? I just need someone to be there for me. I think
it's like, it's pressure too. Will you be my mentor? Will you be my coach? You might go, oh, and you might just have your own head trash at that point. I know how to do all this stuff, but like, I can't help anybody else, which is not true at all. But yeah, if somebody said, hey, if I paid you to do this, like you're always commenting and it's like a big compliment. I mean, if it's not already their profession, I mean, you might find someone who's, oh, I'd love to help you. And you don't even have to pay me. Let's do this for a couple months or something. Or they might be like, sweet. Yeah. How much do you want to pay me?
Exactly. And so you never know exactly, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And especially if it's someone that you like what they're doing, go for it. Or it just happens to be the kind of role that I've fallen into because I think it's so needed, especially for those startup entrepreneurs who we have a lot of knowledge. You guys have all the courses. You've done all of the stuff. You just need to put it into action. And so that's what I'm really passionate about supporting.
Yeah. And really, I mean, you guys listen to us. You kind of get a feel for who we are, but it's like David is just like this all the time. I tell him the most random shit and he's super great at just listening. So I think this post of accountability buddy that you're like this niche that you're going to fill, it's needed and you're good at it. So if anybody just wants to straight up accountability, I'd say David's the way to go. And he also has a plethora of additional knowledge that he's not afraid to like share
it. But if you want all of it and you want me and Teresa to be like right there, just helping you, that's why we do this podcast. But we also do our live events, which on July 10th, we are coming back together to do another event just for you guys. And I, for one, am pretty excited about it. On July 10th, we are doing our Get Shit Done quarterly event where you can work together with me and T, even if you have a busy schedule or a lot on your plate. So we're going to do some presentations. We're going to really see kind of what's going on in your world and what you guys need help with. And we're here for you.
Absolutely. We're here with you. We're here for you. The events are a really great chance to, if you are unclear, if you want to work with us in like a one-on-one capacity, like that's a great way to check it out. We didn't mention that a little bit earlier in the episode, but do people have free events where it's like, it's going to be a Zoom call so you can literally talk to us and interact with us in real time and see what we're like. So I'm super excited for that event. I've had a blast doing the last couple events that we've done. So we really hope to see you there. Put it on your calendar.
Yeah. And it's totally free. So there's no cost. You can just come show up. Again, this is like the key of what we're doing is just giving you value.
Yes. All of the details are on our website, IDKWTFpodcast.com. You will find details about all of the various things we do and our upcoming events.
Exactly.
We could talk for 10 hours. We're not going to do that. We're going to say, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. We are always here with you and for you. So if you need a person, you need a community, you can always start here with us and we will be here for you.
Thanks, everyone. And we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please consider liking, subscribing, and/or reviewing us on wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Also, if there's someone you know who clearly doesn't know what the fuck they're doing and would benefit from this topic, please hit that share button and send them this episode.
Let's normalize the feeling of uncertainty.
Asking for help and admitting that we don't know
what the fuck we're doing either.